anybody out there that is listening to another edition of Croco's Corner. I am Croco. Um, and as I told you guys in the previous video that I did, if you haven't seen it, go check out the Attack on Titan video. Just a little roundup talk about for Attack on Titan. Both of you seen it, and if you haven't seen it, not too many spoilers, but definitely some season 4 spoilers in there. So I do want to give you that little bit of a warning. But if you're a huge Attack on Titan fan or anime fan, highly recommend you go check out that video. But today we are going to do something a little bit different. I wanted to have this kind of come out yesterday a little bit, but just kind of things didn't work out that way. But what we're gonna do is um it is Saturday, the day after the MCU Disney Plus's WandaVision comes out. So what I figured is that we just go through right now and kind of tackle that. I might tag on something else with this. I don't know yet, but yeah, I just really, really want to dive into this because I'm a huge fan of it so far. So, for anybody who's listening, and you maybe in recent years, maybe it was through the Avengers movies or the Iron Man movies, kind of came into this idea of the MCU and this comic book world, and now you're fascinated with it, you love it. What I recommend is you actually maybe hold off on this. I know that's not like the best thing to say, right? It's like, what the fuck, you about to do a whole review on something you're telling me to hold off on? What the No, but the reason why I say that is there's only 2 more episodes left, I believe. And it might be something better for you to just watch as a totality. For people who were more avid comic book fans, you've probably already been watching this episode by episode. You love this stuff just as much as I do. So uh, you know, it's for the people like us to watch it, I feel like, on a weekly basis, whereas somebody who's more so of a casual fan, it might be a little bit better beneficial for you to watch it all together as a whole at the end. So that's my one recommendation if you haven't seen it yet. But I do think even if you are a casual fan, you should check this out. I really, really do. It's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of building, just so much different things that come into play, different characters, new superheroes, new possibly super villains as well. Going to kind of get into that a little bit more in a second. Um, but yeah, it's just something where it definitely builds on this MCU world a lot more. We start to get our first view of Sword, something that we saw at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. We start to kind of get a little bit more of that, and it's really, really cool. I'm not sure what's going to come out of that, if it's going to be like Agents of Shield where they have their own show, kind of building on it a little bit more, or not. But yeah, it's definitely a lot there to unpack, and it certainly will help you, I know for a fact, with the next Doctor Strange movie, The Madness of the Multiverse. It'll help tremendously with that. But with that being said, let's just kind of dive into it. WandaVision. Okay, so the first couple episodes, I'll do a little recap real quick, but what I really want to do is get to the episode that just actually aired yesterday. Uh WandaVision. The Basically how this story starts out is kind of based around this idea of a comic book series about Wanda Maximoff, about Scarlet Witch, that was known as the House of M. More so than that, it teeter-tots on one of the Vision solo runs that I believe happened in the early to mid 2010s. It plays a lot on both, honestly, but it is how we basically pick up with this place in New Jersey. I believe it's called Westfield. I keep messing up that name because I don't. That's like the least of my worries. So I apologize if I messed that up there. But yeah, we start out in this little small town in New Jersey, and what essentially has happened is Wanda has taken control of it. We find out that she's kind of blocked it off to the rest of the world, and what happens inside this world is one that's kind of tailored to Wanda's liking. The framing of it all is along the lines of a television show. So there's different television shows that we're kind of jumping around and about. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous about how this would come out, but it's been really good. It has been really good. The budget for it hasn't lacked. It hasn't shown any lacking. Um and just the familiarity of different shows, whether it's Bewitched, whether it's Malcolm in the Middle, whether it's like the Family Matters esque era television shows, the Full House esque era television shows. They did an excellent job of kind of incorporating those and showing us what those are like. But the big thing with this is that really makes it so good is that there is so many mysteries that's left after each episode. I mean, you're just sitting there and you're like, okay, well, is this? Does this mean that? Who is this? Is that say that? There's so many pieces that they just kind of leave, but they bring it all together, as each episode progresses on. We get an introduction to Monica Rambeau, which we saw her mother in the Captain Marvel movie that came out before the Infinity War saga ish movie came out. Um, and it is I really love what they're doing with her character. I love that they're bringing her in and they're kind of connecting her powers to this grander power, which is that which we believe is what's kind of controlling or manipulating Wanda. Um, or just her powers going haywire, but we're getting eventually what I'm hoping that we're going to get from it is a more defined answer on exactly what is Wanda's powers. We haven't gotten that yet, but that is what looks like we're gonna get more on, but that even ties into Monica Rambeau and what her character actually becomes based off of the comic books. I'm gonna try to say that while avoiding spoilers. Give me 1 second. But outside of Monica Rambeau's character, we do get Vision. He comes back. I mean, if you've seen the trailers, then you know that I'm not really spoiling too much right there. And with that, this is now where the spoilers are going to get a little bit heavier. So warning you, I warned you. After that, what we get is in terms of new characters, we get Wanda's kids, which they are actual characters. They're mutants in the comic books. But there's something where it did build off the comic book story where it was like Wanda brought them into creation. Now, in the comics, this storyline went more so off of okay, she had these kids, but the caveat was no, these kids were really Mephisto's, like a piece of Mephisto, and Wanda ended up having to lose them. It ended up becoming this big thing that eventually led to the House of M event. That was the fallout of her not having her kids or realizing that her kids existed and that they aren't there anymore. And they didn't exactly take that storyline with this. They took this approach of her, knowing the kids are there, her manifesting the kids. But what I think is eventually going to come from this is she will lose her kids at the very end of this, and it's gonna be like a it's gonna have an effect. Now, what effect it's gonna have, I don't know, but I would like for it to be another global ish effect. Like it does. The thing that we got to remember about the snap is that the snap was a universal. It was like the actual universe has lost half of the beings in it. We just were able to see it from a place of Earth. I would like for there to be an event where you do have a big event, but it's more just of a global event, and this is the perfect opportunity to do that. So I hope that her powers do actually go extremely haywire. Maybe at the sight of her losing her kids, maybe at the fallout or whatever comes from it, but I would like for that to happen and for it to have an effect on the movies to come. Now, we do know that the ending or the result of WandaVision is going to play a part in the Doctor Strange movie. And also, from what I've heard, it's going to also tie into this upcoming Spider Man movie as well. It's like these three things are tied to each other. WandaVision starts it off. I believe the Spider Man movie comes before the Doctor Strange movie. So the Spider-Man movie is going to kind of continue on the things that happened in WandaVision, and what's happened in both WandaVision and Spider-Man is going to come to a finale in the Doctor Strange movie. So it's going to be like a little three-part that they give us. And I really do like that. Now that I'm actually seeing the WandaVision, how it's playing out, I think to have these characters linked, to have this like mini saga, because it's not Avengers, it's not Infinity Wars, it's not Endgame, but it's like a miniature version of it. And that's more of a reason why I would feel more comfortable with there actually being a global threat this time around, uh, and that being from Wanda. So yeah, again, outside of that, we do get a couple other characters that come up that I do want to talk about. The main one, which is Agatha Harkness. She comes in the form again. I already warned y'all with spoilers, so yeah. But she comes in the form of this character named Agnes, and I'm really enjoying how that is unwinding. I did not anticipate them to take the take that they did with her in the comics. She is more of a support. She's a witch, but I'll guide you to your powers, Wanda. She's creepy and whatnot, but it wasn't this villainy element to it. It was, I'm here to help you more than I am to hurt you. You just got to let me in. That was the vibe that I always got from anything that I read with Agatha Harkness. Uh, mm, Sorry about that. Um, but that is a big character, and I want to dive more into her in a second. But also, who we get is Darcy from the Thor movies. She actually returns. The actress who plays her, I love her. She's in the Two New Girls, I believe. Yeah, she's in that. I'm pretty confident I got that right, but she's in that show. She kills it. Just a really natural actress, really naturally funny. So her presence in this series, if you took her out of it, in my personal opinion, you would lose a lot of the like humorous side to it, which then it becomes just ultra, ultra, ultra serious because there are a lot of dark points in this series. But Kat Dennings, something like that. If you listen to this, you're like correcting me, so you know who I'm talking about. But yeah, she's really, really great, and I love the role that she's had in this idea of the science behind it all. She really plays a part into the knowledge with that. With Sword, we get like a director. I don't remember his name. He's not really memorable to me, but he one of the biggest things that we kind of get from this is this idea that Sword is targeting specifically Vision. They want the tech that was behind Vision, so that way they can make it into a weapon of some sort. Because as they mentioned earlier in the series, they are working more so in weapons as opposed to protection. It's not, hey, let's protect. Well, that's the way that they frame it. It's not that necessarily the weapons don't take you away from protecting, but because they have these threats, they want to have a threat themselves. Essentially, that's the way that this Sword organization and this MCU universe is handling it. And yeah, I don't know. That threw me for a curve too. I'm between the Agatha Harkness being more or less like a villain and Sword more or less being like a villain. It kind of threw me for a loop somewhat. I do think that the next Captain Marvel movie is this series is putting a lot of excitement around. I think what's gonna eventually happen is Captain Marvel is gonna take over as the head of Sword, which isn't something that is impossible to happen, especially just following storylines. So yeah, it's making me really, really anxious about that because like, is she gonna be the reform? Why we do know that Nick Fury is tied to Sword, but you know we don't know Nick Fury as to be this evil entity or even just like I just don't get if he's this background with Sword now, or maybe he's not, maybe he's still just Shield, but if he's this backbone, excuse me, of Sword, why are they taking this less protective approach that they had before with Shield and this more aggressive approach that they are with Sword? I get for stories it does kind of help to have something that's the opposite, but like in terms of the character, specifically Nick Fury, that throws me off some bit because it's like, are we gonna get now this version of him that's just kind of like really stern, like a lot more stern, a lot more militant, a lot more if anybody familiar with the comics is listening, they'll know what I mean when I say this, but is it like General Thunderbolt? Like, do we get a more General Thunderbolt version of Nick Fury at this point, as opposed to the supportive, protective, fatherly figure that we've had through this Samuel L. Jackson version of Nick Fury? I don't know. I don't really know if this speaks so much on that. Only time is really going to be able to tell with that, but I will say that the connection that Sword plays in this is really throwing me for a loop. um okay, just some things that up until this episode there was a lot of speculation. This episode cleared up a lot of that. This last episode, that was, I really should know it since I'm watching it every week. Hold on. Episode 7, was it 7? Yeah. So episode 7 kind of solved a lot of questions for us, but going into it, I did have a lot of questions. One of the biggest ones was are we getting the ultimates, Are we already have Captain Marvel? Um we already have most of the other characters. So, and then we just got Monica Rambeau. Like, she was like the last piece that I could see for an Ultimates team, and we just got her at the start of this. And it makes me, I was literally thinking, okay, well, Monica's scientist friend, it's got to be Blue Marvel. It's got to be Blue Marvel. It's got to be Blue Marvel. And it would have been a perfect time in my eyes to bring him in. But it unfortunately didn't turn out that way. Some other questions that I've had that this episode, for me personally, it kind of clarified, but I do want to go back and talk about. Uh, yeah, we know that there's something involved, something grander involved here. And there's this idea that it is Mephisto. It's been, or Nightmare. It's been, those two have been heavily, heavily, heavily uh implied. People have a belief that they're even tied to the Doctor Strange movie. Just, again, fan speculation. And to be honest with you, before this episode, I thought that, okay, well, hey, this chaos magic is tied to Nightmare. It's tied to Mephisto. It's because that's what it seems like. It's this chaos magic that Wanda is playing into the hand of. Um, but then, yeah, we get to this episode with Agnes revealing herself as Agatha Harkness in front of Wanda after taking her kids to we don't know where yet. And I'm sure a lot of people are still going to say, okay, well, yeah, Mephisto is still controlling her. One of the characters that we haven't seen yet, which is what was Agnes' wife, or excuse me, husband, Ralph. A lot of speculations. Hey, he might even be Mephisto. He might even be Nightmare. That there's something that is still controlling Agatha Harkness, and you know, I don't know anymore. Like, this last episode, it really made me question whether it's as deep as we're making it. I know a lot of people gonna probably disagree with that. No, 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 dude. But look, it's got to be a higher entity. It makes sense. We've seen so much devil imagery. We've seen so many nightmarish character uh illusions. It's been so many different signs that it has to be. It has to be. It has to be. And I'm not saying that I don't think that there's not, like, it's completely ruled out. No, I do still think that there is a chance that we do get something bigger, and that bigger is just Nightmare or Mephisto or some other figure on that scale. Um, but I'm also just now wondering if, like, okay, maybe we do just get Agatha Harkness as a villain. Like, she's just an evil person. She's just a witch. Like how the classical sense of a witch was looked at is the approach that they're just taking. And the thing is she messed with something that was bigger, too big for her britches. That in Wanda, she thought, okay, well, I've got this book, because we see at the end of this episode that there is a book there that seems like it has a lot of power behind it. There's this aura coming off of it, and then she's got all of this like setup that's just really creepy and eerie down in her basement where her and Wanda confront each other. And um yeah, I just think maybe she got the book. Is it possible she just got the book, and once she got the book, she was like, okay, I'm gonna go mess with Scarlet Witch? Maybe Wanda did something in one of the previous movies that we just kind of missed, or maybe it was something off camera that she did and it pissed Agatha off, and Agatha was just like, all right, well, I got the power to do it now, or so I think. And then now, as she's messing with this very broken Wanda, which is the biggest theme throughout the entire series. We start to see that, oh, maybe she doesn't have control. One of the biggest reasons why I say that, or as much control as she wanted, and one of the biggest reasons why I say this is because in the episode where it's the Halloween episode and Vision's gone, and they another small character, but Sparky, their dog, the kids end up getting this dog named Sparky. One of the biggest things about that is when that whole moment happened with the kids, Wanda and Agnes, when the kids reference that Wanda can bring Sparky back to life after we find out that the dog has died, Agnes is kind of like, you can? Like, if she's shocked that you could do that. So it makes me think maybe Wanda's powers were evolving to an extent that Agatha Harkness, Agnes didn't realize was gonna be as much of a problem as it was. And yeah, she's messing with these like these entities. Maybe it is the entity of Mephisto. Maybe it is the entity of Nightmare. Maybe it's just some other entity altogether. Maybe it's something that we'll learn more about in Eternals, which is something that I really think. But ultimately, it's just her manipulating that power, thinking she can get a hand on somebody who maybe she wants revenge on, or somebody who wronged her in some way in the past that we either missed in one of the movies, or that happened off cam, and she just didn't know. She bit off something that was more that she could chew. Uh I don't know. That's what this and before this episode, I didn't know. I didn't really want to say that that was the case. I didn't really have any indication to say that that was the case. But this episode, to me, it just gave me that thought, like, hey, maybe it is just simply that simple. If you want, I highly do recommend that anybody listening to this, I always shout out people who help me or whatever. And I want to do that right now. If you do, this theory is one that I did have on my own, but if you want a more in-depth idea of what I might be coming from, one of the best people on anything comic book related, Comics Explain. Rob does an amazing job at just kind of doing a breakdown, giving you the reason how he feels, and he is one of the smartest, most articulate people that I've ever heard. So I highly do recommend you go just check that out if you just kind of want to dive in a little bit more on what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'm for the most part, that is pretty much where his mind frame is in this most recent video. I think he did it on the Pop Culture Explained. So you got to check that out. He has multiple pages, but Comics Explained and Pop Culture Explained are his two that talk about these things. But yeah, I 100% do think I agree with what he said. I really do. I think Marvel likes Kevin Feige. They love to fake us out a little bit, and yeah, like I think this is a fake out. I think this is a fake out. Hey, here you go. Here's all of these things that you think happen to be a possibility. We're going to keep you speculating because that shows that you're interested, and then it ends up not being something even as big as it is. Um it happens a lot in the MCU if you look at it, especially like leading up to like before Thanos. There was just these things where it's like, oh, you're trying to guess, you're trying to guess, you're trying to guess, you're trying to guess. Is that who that is? Is that who that is? It might be something as simple as a purple shadow. And you're like, ooh, that's Thanos, but you don't really know. Or you just speculate that it could be 15 different other things. I know before we actually got Thanos, a lot of people thought that it was gonna be Galactus, and that's not to say that Thanos isn't a huge threat, but you see how much of that is like it's like a peg down in a way. Like, wow, I'd rather have to face Thanos, even though Thanos again with the Infinity Stones are insane, and we clearly see that in the MCU now. It's a kind of a step down from Galactus. Galactus is like an even bigger bad, excuse me. Um, and I think that might be the case here. Is hey, maybe it's just Agatha Harkness, and yeah, we do get some of these bigger characters that are like alluded to. Their powers are used, but we don't get them in their totality, which is something that's not even uncommon in the comic books, really. Um, I actually had Nard kind of help me with some things. Nard, if you're there, thank you so much for just the stuff that you did give me. Just some things that he kind of sent to me. I want to touch on, and I'm gonna wrap this up really, really quickly. But the Nexus commercial. One of the things for anybody who hasn't seen it, who's already spoiled themselves this far, one of the biggest things with this series is that there's again it emulates a television show, so it also emulates like commercials throughout just the history of television. And one of the commercials that we got in the last episode, this idea of the Nexus antidepressant, it's supposed to allude to this thing of the nexus of all realities, which is a cross-dimensional gateway which provides a pathway between any and all realities, and it is a direct callback to Ultron, and also that connection will bring Wanda and Doctor Strange together. So yeah, I this is I'm just sorry, I'm just reading what he gave me, but yeah, that once I saw that commercial, I got that idea of the nexus of reality. Yeah, that is what we're going to dive into further with this next Doctor Strange movie. That's now where that tie-in plays a part. Um and I'm curious to see, is this gonna really be it? I mean, I know it's called Madness of the Multiverse, but is this really gonna be it, where the MCU ties it all back into this one Earth, whatever the MCU's Earth is? Is everything gonna get tied back now? And are we gonna get these different multiverses collapsing in on to the Earth that we know in the series now? Um, I really do think this is a lot of, even his notes are just things that are hitting back on Agnes, like the fact that every time someone gets close to Wanda, Agnes is there to distract them. Um, I don't know, and again, she still might not be doing anything alone, but it's just hard for me not to believe that. Uh, it's just hard for me not to believe it now. It really is. It really is. We getting all the way down to the last two episodes, and it's, I mean, I understand it's supposed to be in preparation of the movies to come. You know, it probably is meant to leave you on a cliffhanger because it's the start of the saga, and we've seen the MCU do this before with, and the two Infinity War movies, where they saw the success of leaving us on a cliffhanger, and it's true. They may introduce somebody really big and leave us on another cliffhanger, but I just really don't feel that motivated at that anymore. I really, really, really don't. I do think that their powers are involved, but the reveal that everybody wants, I don't. I'm gonna try to get back on board with it. Probably we'll get a reveal, if not next episode, because we only got two more episodes left. So if we don't get that the next episode, um, in the last one, I won't say that I'll be completely shocked. It's just my motivation right now and towards looking at it in regards to, okay, there's gonna be another really big bad that we get a huge reveal for, and ends up being the main villain that the heroes that we know now are gonna have to combat, or even some of the heroes that we know now are gonna have to combat, like the case of Wanda, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Blade. I don't know, but I'm not. I'm just not too hung up on it. One last thing that I want to talk about in regards to this, in regards to this last episode, episode 7, was there was a post credit scene where Monica sneaks around Agatha's house after Monica and um Wanda had like a little confrontation, and that's where we started to see Monica's powers kind of unlock a little bit more. She was able to hold her ground against Wanda, but then Agnes kind of took Wanda away from Monica. So we pick up with that at the post credit scene where Monica's sneaking around, and as soon as she finds this basement, we see some of the aura and magic that we've just now in the very ending moments of this episode seen with Agatha or Agnes. And as soon as we see that aura, we see that this basement leads down there. Quicksilver, oh, well, all right, we're here now already with the spoilers, but Quicksilver does also return in this, for anybody that didn't know that. Now you do. But yeah, Wanda's brother, Pietro Maximoff, he actually pops up earlier in the series, but at the end of this episode, we get him again, and he clearly seems to be tied to either Agnes. Well, we know for a fact because Agnes shows she did have some control in Pietro arriving in the previous episode to Wanda's house. But whether it's Agnes or whether it's a greater power or whatever the case may be, Quicksilver is definitely being manipulated. And this Quicksilver that we see here is clearly tied to that. Now, whether he's tied directly to Agnes, I think it's more likely the fact that he's just there at her house like that. He pops up as soon as Monica opens the doors to the basement. Yeah, I do believe that it's just literally, yeah, he's a construct of some sort that both Wanda can control, because I do believe Wanda, she does start it. She starts a lot of it. Once it's out there, then it becomes Agatha Harkness's control. So I do believe that this is just a Wanda creation, but now Agatha control creation. That being Quicksilver. He pops up and just says, "Snooper's gone Snoop." And then after that, we see that Monica's eyes actually have the more purplish hue, which before, they they did a really good job of this because it kind of would throw you off when Monica first was showing her powers, both breaking through the hex and also when she was kind of having her little face off with Wanda. It was a really pure blue. It's the best way I could describe it. I don't know the exact color, but it was a very pure blue. And what was really cool about it is at the end of when you get to that post scene credit, it's her eyes are now purple, so we know that okay, Agatha has gotten in there in the Monica's mind somehow. But if you miss it, because as soon as you see it, it cuts off. If you miss it, it could almost look like it was her blue eyes, but it has a purplish tint to it, and that's how we know that yeah, this was something where through Quicksilver, she Agatha was able to control Monica. So that was really the last thing that we got. Two super 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 powerful people in the Marvel universe now are both controlled by Agatha Harkness. So and that's more reason why I'm like this might just be Agatha. Like Agatha might be the big bad because it's like she has two of the most power. Now that we have Monica Rambeau with powers, not just Monica Rambeau, but Monica Rambeau with her powers, her you have to debate now, is Captain Marvel the strongest, or even now Scarlet Witch is the strongest. This is a really powerhouse that we have here as a character. She is ridiculously powerful. And so now the fact that Agatha has a ridiculously powerhouse in Wanda already. She's already had that control. Now she really has that control. But now she also could potentially have Monica Rambeau, another powerhouse under her control. Controlling both of them, and if she brings their powers both out to their fullest extent, that is a Thanos-like level event. It to me is. It just is. We're talking about reality changing. We're talking about the powers of the light spectrum, powers of just all of these just dense powers. I mean, Monica's powers are like to that subatomic level, like, we're seeing of Wanda inside this universe. So to lose her right now is a big hit for Sword and the rest of this world. And why even bring in another villain at that point? You got this witch who has this book, who clearly this book. Now, don't get me wrong, the book is definitely tied to some of that greater allure or lore that we're thinking is what's actually here, aka Nightmare, aka Mephisto. But Agatha alone, just having enough power from this book to control both of them is huge. Is huge. It's really big. It's big enough to make her a big bad. It's big enough to make Agatha a Thanos level threat. And I just don't think that people want to accept it. I think a lot of the fans, a lot of the community, they don't want to accept Agatha Harkness. If you read the comic books, really, Agatha Harkness is the big bad. But again, when you charge her up with this book, and that book is allowing her to control two really big powerhouses of characters. Yeah, that makes her a Thanos level threat. And I just think that we might have to be okay with that. I don't really think it. I think because we're hyping ourselves up on Nightmare or Mephisto or some other entity, some other Dark Lord entity, um, you know, it's setting us up to be disappointed. But if you just look at the course of the show, no, it was an awesome storyline. It was an awesome character to bring in. It was an awesome character to add power to. Agatha Harkness is still nobody's punk, her powers are really, she's old, she's mad old, she's like thousands of years old as far as I know. She goes way, 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 way back. I don't know whether it's the Salem witch trials or even before that, but she goes way, 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 way back. And she's nobody to just scoff at. So for them to kind of give her a power boost in the MCU, I'm not mad at that. And they're justifying it in a rational way. It's not just Agatha Harkness, it's Agatha Harkness with this book that we know once Doctor Strange got his book, he got all of his powers and was a crazy powerhouse. Why can't it be the same thing for her? And it just be that simple. So I don't know. I that's really where my head is right now in regards to this. But um again, I feel like episode 8 is really it probably approve whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong But that's really more or less where I stand on it right now. I'm removing this idea of uh Mephisto or Nightmare having a bigger role, because I just think Agatha is enough right now to look at. She's doing a lot. She could just stop all of the other. She could stop all of the connection or whatever right now, if she, as long as she could hold those powers, and if she has the powers that she has now, and it's as powerful as they are, to where she can again control these two powerhouses plus be a powerhouse on her own. That is a big enough threat to me. That is a big enough threat. But thank you guys again for listening to another edition of Croco's Corner. If you don't agree with me, hey, just throw it in the comments. We are available on YouTube. I'm gonna put this up on YouTube as well. So just let me know what you think. If you agree, you agree. If you don't, you don't. But as well as YouTube, we are also available on SoundCloud. We are also available on Spotify. And lastly, we are also available on Apple Podcasts. So just guys, make sure that you keep yourselves updated on whatever platform is best for you. But again, thank you so much for joining me for another just adventure and experience and just deep thought with you guys in regards to this stuff. All right, you guys, take care.